you check the children.
Hi, I'm Chucky. Wanna play?
Sometimes that is better.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Horror Show. I'm Cecil Laird.
And Jaime Fuego here.
And welcome back to our weekly Chucky coverage, which is crazy to be able to say in the first place, to be honest with you. Because, I've loved Chucky for many, many years. But to be able to, for the second year in a row, say welcome back to the weekly Chucky coverage, it's pretty exciting. And that in and of itself is a win before we even get to the episode.
Especially after the weirdness of a remake that they had right around the same time that this, show debuted. It's,
well, it was 2019.
Oh.
The show debuted last year, so it was two years before it.
Yeah, I mean, it all just mushes together at this particular point, and when we're thinking about post-COVID. But yeah, man, I'm very excited for what they can potentially do with this show as far as like reaching back more so than anything.
Although some of the choices that they make, even right off the bat, you're like, well, how much reaching back can we do if we're doing this again? But let's get into it. We'll talk about the episode the way we normally talk about our stuff. We'll give our overall thoughts, then our thoughts on how the story progressed, any effects, how it's being made, all that good stuff. And being a television show, we do tend to talk about what happened in the episode. So if you guys are worried about being spoiled about what's in the episode, then just stop the video and save it to watch later until after you've seen it. We'll get to that stuff a little bit later anyway. So overall thoughts were, I actually didn't mind the episode. I thought it was okay. I thought the grand motion to get the kids where they're going to be for this season was really kind of goofy. Didn't really vibe with me for a couple of different reasons. But outside of that, it felt like it was a mostly epilogue to season 1, and then just at the very end, it began where we're going to be at season 2. That's the way it felt to me. So while it was enjoyable, it was a little bit weird in its decisions, but I did like the acting. I think the acting has improved for the main 3 since season 1. I think they've been doing their work, and I liked that. But yeah, overall, I'm happy to be back in the world of Chucky with the original actors again.
Yeah, this is where you beating me to the punch is a little tough because, yeah, all 3 of these kids are significantly better in just this little, like, bite-size sort of situation. And, yeah, it was very much like a setup episode. It was, just laying the proverbial ground for what we're gonna eventually figure out, because we know from the trailers it's gonna be a religiously themed extent of some regard. But I don't know, I thought that the love between our 2 dudes was very solid and cool and had a little bit more of endearment. Lexi, I mean, her and Caroline, her younger sister, I thought that was actually made a little bit better in that one particular scene. We have everything with Andy and like the big sort of grandiose sort of bit, and then they kind of reneged on it, and I was a little bit bummed out, based on that. And I mean, who knows? He may still be okay. He may still be alive, but yeah, we shall see without spoiling anything. So
yeah, it was one of those choices. They made that choice with another character last season that we were like, what the fuck? Is that really it? And they did make me think with one bit of dialogue that Chucky had that maybe not all is as it seems with regards to that. So I'm hoping that that's the case. But yeah, I feel like the actual literal continuation of the season finale from last year, it like set a weird tone for the rest of the show as a long-time Chucky fan.
Yeah, it was kind of squandered in my opinion. I mean, if Andy even mentions Kyle, as he's doing his thing without spoiling stuff. So I don't know.
So yeah, it set a weird tone at the beginning, but then it goes back to the kids, and it goes back to the kids pretty close after what happened last season, and it's showing that Jake is moving away with his new foster family, and so they have their little going away kiss, and then they say we're going to see each other all the time, and then 6 months passes. And, apparently they didn't see each other all the time. In fact, they appear to have not seen each other basically at all. And so it's a weird situation. And 6 months later is Halloween, and there's suddenly weird calls coming in to the trio. and it's a familiar voice, and it turns out that Zach, Chucky's back. Zach is the name of the actor that plays the lead. So
yeah, and I mean, like, also with the therapist using the doll, that I thought was a little bit peculiar, but makes its way into the narrative.
That's got history in the films, right? They didn't one of the therapists in Cult of Chucky try and use the doll as therapy.
Yeah, you're right.
Yep.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that.
So yeah, that's got precedence, and what's cool is they did they called her Belle, like Belle the Bride or whatever, which is the doll that Tiffany put her soul into and then changed and made into, she did the dot, she dyed the hair. So it's interesting that, it's the original look of the doll that actually makes sense. There was a line that I think some people were bumping up against in it, just as a little side point, where
I was actually going to ask you about it because I know exactly where you're going. I found it a head scratcher myself.
So Devin, right? Devin is the kid's name, the boyfriend. And at one point, he brings up Bride of Chucky, and he says, "Remember that movie?" And so what I think he's referring to is the movie that they were making in Seed of Chucky, not our Bride of Chucky. Because remember, they were making a movie in Seed of Chucky.
I recall very vaguely, but yeah.
Yeah, no, so because a lot took place on the set, and remember, wasn't his name John Waters gets decapitated by them, and yeah, so that's the movie that he's referring to. He's not referring to our Bride of Chucky. Apparently, that movie that was being made in Seed of Chucky ended up being called Bride of Chucky in this world. So that's what he was referring to. I didn't bump up against that at all. I was like, oh, he's just referring to the movie they were making in Seed. So
yeah, I didn't think bad about it, but I was like, okay, I'm thinking Dark Tower sort of thing, where there was like a self-awareness of, and popular characters and properties and so on and so forth. But yeah,
that's what he was referring to. So yeah, I mean, again, so far we've covered the story, which was a little thin for episode 1, but it was just like I said, it was an epilogue and a prologue, basically.
Yeah, it was strictly set up, dude. In my estimation, in said regard, and everything we'd seen from the trailers about the fact that they're going to be at this religious school and so on and so forth. Yeah, we didn't really get much of that. It was just like the migration towards that inevitable end. So.
I think the filmmaking is fine. It's still, it worked really well last season. There was a couple of questionable shots of Chucky as far as decisions as to where to place the camera, but that only happened a couple times in the 10 episodes of season 1. So far so good in this one. I mean, Chucky still looks really good the way that he's animated, and all that. Not animated, but what I mean, animated as in he lights up kind of stuff. Yeah, I thought all that was fine, and the little bit of effects that we got, they were fine too.
Yeah, and it's not like there was like a high kill count or anything crazy of that nature. There was really more so than anything that implied sort of boom without, divulging anything and spoiling. But aside from that, that's like really the only big cathartic bit of nastiness that he can take claim to.
Yeah, realistically, we didn't get to really see Chucky even until like the last segment of the first episode. So it was a slow roll. It was mostly wrap up to season 1 and then a little lead into season 2, what season 2 is going to be.
Yeah, totally set up, man. Set up. But
but still, I mean, okay. I'm not like, some people are like, I'm worried about this season, and I'm like, why?
I'm not.
I don't understand. Like, what's to be worried about? It wrapped up the storylines from season 1. Yes, there was a questionable decision, the thing that you just referred to that we don't want to spoil. That was a weird decision, but it's like, whatever, it's a decision that's made. It wasn't involving like one of the core characters. It was something that I can live with. I mean, I wasn't really particularly attached. So, I mean, it is what it is, and now we're at the boarding school, and we're gonna see what this season's finally all about. So, I don't know really what there is to be worried about just yet.
Yeah, and based on the improvement of the actors specifically, man, I mean, all three of those kids, they were a little wooden in that first season, but I'm feeling the improvement on all three of their parts. So bring it on, man.
I like that they really reined in the main kid's hair this season, because it was wild last season the whole time.
Yeah, chopping it down a little bit. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, what else is there to discuss? I don't think there's anything else really to discuss. I mean, there was a few Chuckies at the beginning and the Tiffany, but that all gets resolved, and well, for the most part, resolved. So yeah, again, we don't want to spoil certain beats of the show, so you can still have some fun if you haven't watched it yet.
Yeah, it's honestly making me wonder, man, like how much are we gonna have that particular actress involved in things, because I feel like, you know, there was a hint of a big sort of thing, and then it's been diminished, and I don't know. I suppose we shall only see as the episodes go by.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, everyone's coming back, and I don't think anyone's gonna.
Yeah.
I mean, the only one that might have less of a role would be, you know, Fiona Dourif.
Yeah.
Mostly because there's just less of her to go around now. So
and I mean, props to her dad, man. Like there is a nuance to the way that he is delivering some of his dialogue in this particular season, and yeah, great stuff.
He's not starting to sound old like some people do. Like he still sounds like, you know, young Charles Lee Ray, and the laughs are still on point, and yeah, all of it still works with him for sure.
Yeah, have to give a proper shout out there.
Indeed. So, yeah, I mean, I think that's going to cover all the non-spoilery stuff that we can talk about. Just real quick, let's hit on the spoilery stuff. If anyone is wanting to avoid it, go ahead and tune away. But at the beginning, it picks up with Andy driving the truck full of Chucky dolls that he is trying to hijack, with the Tiffany doll holding a gun on him in through the hole from the back area of the truck. And he jerks the car at one point, and she drops the gun. He reaches down and grabs it. He shoots her head off with one shot. So I don't know exactly how that works, but it did. And while the other Chuckies are talking in the back, because I did like the moment while he was driving.
Which is actually funny.
Yeah, I like the moment when
they're alone, and, you know, they're all talking about the virility and so on and so forth. I thought that was funny.
No, but the moment I'm talking about is when one of them looks at him in the rearview mirror, is like, I know you. And like the realization that it was Andy, I was like, oh, that's cool. Okay, that was a fun little moment. But then, you know, Andy decides, well, the only thing, because the Chucky dolls start escaping the truck. They bust out and they start climbing on the top, and he's like, I got to do something. So all he can think to do is drive off the cliff. Yep. He drives off a cliff, the truck goes crashing, and apparently we're led to believe that it's kills him and demolishes the Chucky dolls. Although they're dolls, and a lot of them were outside the truck, and the truck didn't even explode. So I don't know exactly how they're supposed to be destroyed.
Yeah, and there's actually a little bit of information later on in the episode where they're like, yeah, well, nothing was destroyed and blah, blah, blah. And so they hint that, Alex Benson could be back. And
well, they said that they didn't find a body. And when they asked Chucky how many of him there are, he said enough to make this sacrifice worth it. Because he shows up to the trio finally in the last scene. The first time we see him is when he shows up to the trio being held by the main character's foster brother, and Chucky is holding a homemade bomb that is meant to destroy anything within 6 feet of him. So he basically shows up in order to blow up our lead, Devin, and Lexi all in one fell swoop. But unfortunately for him, our lead uses a taser and tases him before he can hit the button, knocks Chucky down, and the little kid picks up the bomb and runs into the other room with a smile on his face because he thinks it's all a joke. Like, he doesn't realize the danger of the situation. And then all of a sudden, Chucky pops over his shoulder and hits the button, blowing the kid up and, like, destroying that section of the house. Not killing any of his intended targets, but just killing this one kid that actually brought him over. And then, obviously, because no one can prove that it was Chucky that did it, the 3 kids take the downfall for they're blamed for creating a homemade bomb and blowing up this kid. So that's why they're sent off to boarding school or, religious school, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, and I was amused by the fact that Lexi is still, it's like, it's not weed, it's, blow that is like her thing. Like, I don't know. I don't really know how much the kids of that of that age range are easily accessible for, nasty drugs of said nature, but, whatever. It is what it is. And yeah.
So what was your thoughts on the bomb?
The bomb aspect felt just lame to me, man. It felt like kind of an afterthought, and
it felt like such an extreme way to get the kids blamed for something when they really, I don't understand why they would be blamed for it, but that was the big decision I didn't understand in this episode. I was like, why? Like, but that's not enough for me to worry about the season. It's like, they obviously made a choice because they had to get the kids to the boarding school, and this is the route they chose. So it is a bit questionable, but look, it's just one decision. Yes, it's the first episode. We only have one episode so far, and it's one big bad decision. But, I don't know that bodes that there's going to be one bad decision in every episode or anything.
Yeah, I'm very okay with the fact that Don Mancini wants to, like, triumphantly parade himself around and be like, Chucky created by Don Mancini and so on and so forth. Like, I mean, he's earned it. It's cool, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm gonna like give him an okay for every sort of choice.
Yeah.
If it's a head scratcher. But
no, totally understandable. So yeah, all right. Those were the two big things I wanted to mention. I mean, was there anything else that we missed? I mean, Glenn and Glenda weren't introduced this episode. We know they're coming this season, but we didn't see them yet.
No. Yeah, it was a very strange, very much back to, it was set up to, like, this entire episode was set up and not as particularly fulfilling as I was hoping it to be, but not bad. I'm not of the hater brigade, and the trio specifically, I've somehow grown to like these kids, and I'm cool with them. So bring it on in said regard. So
all right. So that's going to do it, you guys. Thank you very much for watching, and thank you to all of our patrons for supporting the channel the way that you do. We greatly appreciate it. Until next time, though, I've been Cecil Laird.
Yep, and gracias, I've been having fuego.
And remember, stay scared.